Today English podcast. Welcome, my friend, to a new story, a new journey, and a new moment to practice your English in a calm, gentle, and enjoyable way. Today, we begin a long, warm, relaxing story about making smart decisions in life. A story told slowly, clearly, like a friend sitting beside you on a quiet evening, speaking in simple English, helping you understand every word, every feeling, and every idea. And as you listen, you not only practice English, you also practice thinking about your own life, your own choices, and the path you want to walk. So take a deep breath, settle in, and let's begin with the very first part of this long story, a part that starts with a single moment, a moment when someone must choose, even when the choice is not easy. Our story begins with a young man named Daniel, a simple, kind, and thoughtful person who always wanted to do the right thing, but often felt unsure about his decisions. He lived in a small town full of warm mornings, slow afternoons, and quiet nights. The town had only one main street, with a bakery on the corner that smelled like fresh bread every morning, and a small park in the center where children played and old people sat, telling stories. Daniel worked at a small cafe, a peaceful place where people came for coffee, conversation, and comfort. But inside him, there was always a question, a small voice asking, "Am I making the right decisions in my life?" And this question followed him every day, sometimes quietly, sometimes loudly, like a small bird tapping on a window, asking to be heard. On one particular morning, Daniel woke up earlier than usual. The sun had not fully risen yet, and the world was still soft and quiet. He sat on the edge of his bed, looking out the window at the dim light. Something felt different. He felt a new sense of energy, something beginning, something waiting. He made a cup of warm tea and sat at his small wooden table. And as the tea steam rose in front of him, he suddenly remembered a message he received the night before, a message that could change his life. It was from an old friend named Sarah, a friend he had not spoken to in years. She wrote, "Daniel, I know this is sudden, but there's an opportunity for you. Something that might help you grow. Something bigger than this town. If you want to hear more, meet me tomorrow at the old lighthouse." The lighthouse was outside the town, on a quiet hill, facing the wide sea. It was a place Daniel had not visited for a long time. When he read the message again that morning, he felt many things: excitement, fear, curiosity, doubt. He wondered what this opportunity was, why Sarah thought of him, and whether he was ready for something new. He walked to work thinking about the message, his thoughts moving slowly like the morning fog. At the cafe, he greeted customers with a smile, made coffee, cleaned tables, and listened to the usual sounds he heard every day. But inside, his mind was somewhere else, thinking about the lighthouse, the opportunity, and the choice he needed to make. By the time his shift ended, he still had no answer. That afternoon, he walked toward the park, hoping the fresh air would clear his thoughts. Children were running, people were talking, and birds were singing in the trees. Life around him was full of small movements, small choices, small moments. And Daniel realized something. Every person in this park made thousands of decisions every day: when to wake up, where to go, what to say, how to act, and who to be. Some decisions were small, some big, but together they created the direction of a life. Daniel looked at the people and wondered how many of them felt confident about their choices. How many felt uncertain, just like him? And then he asked himself the question again: should I go to the lighthouse tomorrow? Should I listen to what Sarah has to say? Should I allow myself to imagine a different future? He sat on a bench and closed his eyes for a moment. In his mind, he remembered the last conversation he had with Sarah, many years ago. She was always brave, always curious, always ready for something new. She used to tell him, "Life is full of paths. And sometimes, we must choose a path even when we cannot see where it will lead. He remembered her voice, her smile, her excitement for life. And then he thought of himself careful, thoughtful, but often afraid to make a big choice. He wondered if this opportunity was something he needed, something he had been quietly hoping for. As the sun began to lower in the sky, Daniel stood up, walked home, and made himself a light dinner. He looked at the message once more, and this time, something inside him felt more certain. Not fully sure, but a little stronger, a little braver. And he told himself, maybe it's time to see what is waiting for me. Maybe it's time to at least listen. He went to bed early, set an alarm, and hoped that tomorrow would bring clarity. The next morning, the world felt cool and bright. Daniel left his house before sunrise, walking along the quiet streets toward the hill where the old lighthouse stood. The path was peaceful, with soft wind and the smell of the sea. When he reached the lighthouse, he saw Sarah standing there, looking at the ocean. She turned and smiled. And in that smile, Daniel felt a sense of calm. They talked, catching up on life, sharing memories, sharing laughter. Then, slowly, Sarah explained the opportunity. She told him about a training program in the city, something that could help him develop new skills, something that could help him grow, something that could open new doors for his future. But it required a big decision. He would need to leave the town for a long time, live in a new place, meet new people, and challenge himself in ways he never had before. Sarah looked at him and said gently, "Daniel, I thought of you because I know you have something special. You're kind, responsible, and thoughtful. But I also know that sometimes you don't believe in yourself. This could help you discover what you're capable of." Daniel felt his heart beat faster. He looked at the sea, the waves moving slowly back and forth, and he felt both fear and hope. He imagined what life in the city might be like. New experiences, new opportunities, a new version of himself. But he also imagined the challenges, being far from home, not knowing anyone, feeling lost or confused. It was not an easy decision. They talked for a long time about life, about fear, about dreams, and about taking steps even when we're not sure where they will lead. At the end of the conversation, Sarah said, "You don't need to decide now. But you do need to think deeply. Your life will not change unless you make a choice." After she left, Daniel stayed at the lighthouse for a long time. He walked around the old stone walls, touched the cold metal railing, and listened to the sound of waves crashing below. The air smelled like salt and freedom. And in that quiet moment, he realized something important. Sometimes, smart decisions are not about choosing the safe path. They're about choosing the path that helps you grow, the path that makes you stronger, the path that opens your eyes to the world. But he also realized another truth. Not every opportunity is right. And not every moment is the right moment. A smart decision is made not with fear or pressure, but with honesty and clarity. He sat on a rock near the cliff and closed his eyes. He let the wind touch his face and allowed himself to feel everything: fear, excitement, doubt, hope. And slowly, he understood something deeper. The real challenge was not the opportunity itself. The real challenge was believing that he was capable of change. Believing that he could learn, grow, adapt, and succeed. Believing that he deserved a chance to become more than he was today. He opened his eyes, stood up, and looked at the horizon. The sky was wide, the ocean endless. And in that moment, he felt something inside him shift, something soft but powerful, like a leaf turning toward the sunlight. He told himself, "I don't know what will happen, but I will not let fear decide my life for me." And that simple sentence became the beginning of his transformation. As he walked back down the hill, his steps felt lighter. He didn't have all the answers yet, but he had something more important, a feeling of direction. He understood that smart decisions are not perfect decisions. They are decisions made with awareness, courage, and honesty. He smiled softly as he reached the bottom of the hill, thinking, maybe this is the first smart decision I make, not because it's easy, but because I am finally listening to my own heart. And so, Daniel returned to his small town, carrying not only the possibility of a new opportunity, but also the beginning of a new mindset. A mindset that told him he was allowed to grow, to change, to choose, and to become. And this was only the beginning of his long journey of learning how to make smart decisions in life. The familiar houses, the peaceful street, the sound of someone sweeping their porch across the road, all of it looked the same, but something in Daniel felt different. He felt taller inside, not physically, but mentally, as if his thoughts now stood on a slightly higher ground. He made his morning tea and sat at the small wooden table that had always been his place of thinking, deciding, worrying, and dreaming. He held the warm cup in his hands, letting the heat comfort him, and he whispered to himself, I need to understand this choice. I need to see it clearly. And so he began thinking not only about the opportunity, but about his entire life, how he made decisions, why he hesitated so often, why he doubted himself, and what he really wanted out of the days and years ahead. After finishing his tea, he walked slowly to the cafe for work. The street was still waking up. A few shops were opening their doors. A woman was walking her dog. A delivery truck hummed at the corner. Everything looked peaceful, but Daniel's mind was full of movement, full of questions. When he reached the cafe, he tied his apron, greeted his coworkers, and began his usual tasks. But today, every action felt slightly different. As he made coffee for a customer, he wondered, could I do this forever? As he wiped a table, he asked himself, is this the life I want to continue living for the next 5 or 10 years? And then he laughed softly to himself, thinking, or am I just afraid of change? The cafe filled with people coming in and out, talking, laughing, reading, working. He saw young people dreaming about their futures, old people sharing stories from their past, and middle-aged people trying to keep balance in their busy lives. And he wondered if all of them struggled with decisions too, if all of them carried silent questions in their hearts the way he did. During his break, he went outside and sat behind the cafe near a small alley where delivery boxes were stacked neatly. He leaned against the wall and closed his eyes, letting the cool air touch his face. He thought about Sarah's words again. You don't need to decide now, but you do need to think deeply. And he knew she was right. A decision like this was not something he could make quickly. It needed time, honesty, and courage. But the problem was not time. The problem was fear of the unknown, fear of failure, fear of stepping out of the comfortable world he had always known. He asked himself, why do I always choose the safer path? He knew the answer, because safety feels warm, soft, familiar. But familiarity can sometimes be a cage, a quiet place that keeps your dreams from growing. He opened his eyes and looked at the sky. A small bird flew above him, free and confident in the open air. And Daniel wondered why humans struggled so much with choices while birds simply flew without hesitation. When his break ended, he returned to work, but the questions stayed with him. And when his shift finally finished, he walked to the park again, hoping that movement, air, and open space would help his thoughts settle. The park was calm today. Only a few people were walking. The fountain in the middle made a gentle, comforting sound. Daniel sat on the same bench as before, the bench that had become his thinking place. He closed his eyes, breathed deeply, and asked himself a simple but powerful question. What do I really want my life to feel like? Not what job he wanted. Not where he wanted to live. Not what people expected of him. But what he wanted life to feel like. Peaceful, exciting, meaningful, challenging, or full of stories he could one day tell. And as he sat there, he felt something warm rise inside him. He realized he wanted a life that made him feel alive, a life that helped him grow, a life where he could learn new things, meet new people, and feel proud of himself. And he whispered softly, "Maybe I have been waiting too long to take a real step." As evening arrived, he walked home slowly, thinking about his childhood. He remembered moments when he wanted to try new things, but stopped himself. He remembered standing on the edge of a diving board at age 10, wanting to jump into the pool, but being too scared. He remembered being 15, wanting to join a school club, but worrying about not fitting in. He remembered being 17, wanting to apply for a scholarship in another city, but choosing not to because he didn't feel ready. And now he wondered how many opportunities he had walked away from, not because they were wrong, but because he was afraid. "I don't want fear to decide my life anymore," he said to himself as he unlocked his door and stepped inside his small home. He made dinner, sat at his table, and took out an old notebook where he used to write thoughts and dreams. He opened a blank page and wrote at the top, "What will happen if I say yes?" Under that, he wrote, "What will happen if I say no?" And for the next hour, he wrote everything that came into his mind. If he said yes, he would face challenges, new people, new environment, learning new skills, making mistakes, getting lost. But if he said yes, he would also grow, learn, change, and experience something bigger than this small town. And if he said no, life would stay the same, safe, calm, predictable, but also limited. He would wake up in the same place, do the same work, follow the same routines. And maybe, years later, he would wonder what could have happened if he had been brave. When he finished writing, he looked at the two lists. They were long, honest, and full of truth. And for the first time, he felt like he understood himself more clearly. Not perfectly, but enough to see the direction his heart was leaning toward. Before going to bed, Daniel stepped outside and looked at the quiet night sky. The stars were bright, scattered across the darkness like small pieces of hope. He took a deep breath and said softly, "Maybe this decision is not about leaving this town. Maybe it's about leaving behind the person who was too afraid to try." And with that thought, he walked back inside, closed the door, and felt a deeper sense of calm. He didn't make a final decision yet, but he could feel himself getting closer. He could feel courage growing slowly, quietly, patiently inside him. As he lay in bed, he thought about something his grandmother once told him when he was little. A smart decision is a decision you can look back on without regret. He smiled because he finally understood what she meant. A smart decision is not about knowing the future. It is about choosing based on honesty, reflection, and courage. It is about listening to your heart and your mind together, not one louder than the other. And as Daniel slowly drifted into sleep, he felt something gentle in his chest, a small beginning of belief in himself, belief that he could make a decision not from fear, but from strength. He slept peacefully that night, with dreams full of open roads, wide skies, and new possibilities. And when morning came again, he knew that the next part of his journey would bring him closer to the answer he needed. This was not just a story about an opportunity. It was a story about learning how to trust yourself, how to discover your own voice, and how to step into a future shaped not by fear, but by choice. It was a simple sentence, almost too simple, yet it carried a weight he was only beginning to understand. After making a warm cup of tea, he stepped outside for a short morning walk. The air was cool and clean, and the world felt peaceful. As he walked along the quiet street, he noticed small things he usually ignored, the sound of leaves brushing against each other in the gentle wind, the way the early light touched the roofs of houses, the soft hum of a distant car. Everything felt slow, almost speaking to him, as if the world itself was telling him to breathe, to take his time, to think with clarity. Daniel realized that sometimes the world becomes quiet not because nothing is happening, but because it wants you to hear the voice inside you, the voice that often gets lost in noise, routines, and fears. When he reached the corner bakery, the familiar smell of warm bread floated through the door. The old baker, Mr. Thompson, saw him and waved. Daniel walked in, and the baker smiled kindly, saying, "You look thoughtful this morning." Daniel smiled shyly and replied, "Just thinking about life, I guess." Mr. Thompson nodded slowly, as if he understood without needing more explanation. He handed Daniel a small warm roll and said, "Sometimes, the biggest decisions are made when we are quiet enough to hear what we already know." Those words stayed in Daniel's mind like a soft echo, following him as he left the bakery and continued walking. He wondered how many people around him had made quiet decisions that changed their lives forever, decisions no one else saw, decisions made in the heart before they were made in the world. After his walk, he went to work at the cafe. It was a busier day than usual, and the noise of customers talking, cups clinking, and the coffee machine hissing filled the room with energy. But even in that busy environment, Daniel felt a strange sense of calm, as if something inside him had opened a small window to let fresh air in. He watched people come and go, young students talking about exams, an older couple holding hands while sharing a slice of cake, a tired man reading a newspaper, a woman working on her laptop near the window. He wondered what decisions they were carrying in their hearts. Everyone, he realized, had their own private world, their own silent battles, their own dreams, and their own choices. And somehow, this thought made him feel less alone. It made him feel connected to something bigger, something human, something universal. During his break, he stepped outside again, but this time he walked a little farther, wandering down a quiet street he usually ignored. There were trees lining both sides of the road, their branches dancing lightly in the wind. He found a small bench under one of the trees and sat down, letting the calm of the place settle inside him. He closed his eyes and allowed his thoughts to float naturally, without forcing anything. And in that quiet moment, something important surfaced, a memory from years ago, a moment he had almost forgotten. He was about 9 years old, sitting on the grass behind his school. He had just lost a small competition, and he felt embarrassed, thinking he was not good enough. His grandmother found him there, sitting alone, and she sat beside him quietly. Then she said something he never fully understood until now. Sometimes, the world will speak loudly and confuse you. But the truth inside you will always speak softly. And if you learn to hear it, you will know what to do. As he remembered those words, he felt a warm pressure in his chest, not painful, but emotional, like a soft light glowing inside him. He finally understood what she meant. The quiet voice inside him was not telling him what decision to make, it was telling him to trust himself, to trust that he was capable of making a good choice, even if it scared him. He opened his eyes and looked at the sky, which was now clearer, brighter. He thought about the opportunity again, moving to the city, starting the training program, meeting new people, learning new skills. He imagined himself walking in a busy city street, holding a notebook, attending classes, talking to people from different places. He imagined feeling lost sometimes, confused sometimes, maybe even lonely. But he also imagined feeling excited, proud, challenged, and changed. And he asked himself a question he had never asked before. Do I want to live a life that stays the same? Or a life that grows with me? And suddenly, he realized something powerful. Growth is not comfortable, but staying the same can be painful too, especially when your heart knows you want more. When his break ended, he went back to work, but his mind kept returning to that question. After his shift, instead of going straight home, he visited his parents' house. They lived only a few streets away, in a small cozy home with a garden full of colorful flowers. His mother opened the door with a warm smile, surprised but happy to see him. "Daniel." "What a nice surprise," she said, giving him a gentle hug. His father was reading the newspaper in the living room, and he looked up with a smile as well. Daniel sat down at the table with them and shared a light dinner. At first, they talked about simple things: the weather, the cafe, neighbors, the garden. But Daniel knew he came there because he needed to talk about the decision he was struggling with. So after dinner, when the conversation slowed and a calm silence filled the room, he finally said, "I need to tell you something." His parents listened quietly as he explained the opportunity Sarah had told him about. He told them about the training program, the possibility of moving to the city, the challenges and the fears. His mother looked at him with soft eyes, listening to every word. His father sat quietly, thinking deeply. When Daniel finished speaking, he felt nervous, unsure of what they would say. His mother reached across the table, placing her hand gently on his, and said, "Daniel, you have always been careful. Maybe too careful. But I can see you growing. I can see you thinking deeply about your life. And I am proud of you." His father nodded slowly and added, "Son, life will never give you complete certainty. If you wait for the perfect moment, you may wait forever. But if this feels important to you, then we will support you." Their words felt like a soft blanket wrapped around his heart. He felt understood, supported, and not alone. And that made his courage grow even more. After leaving his parents' house, Daniel walked home under the evening sky. The stars were slowly appearing, tiny lights guiding him from above. He walked slowly, thinking about the day, about the quiet voice inside him, about his parents' support. He realized something important. Making a smart decision is not only about thinking clearly. It is also about feeling supported, feeling understood, and feeling connected to people who want the best for you. Smart decisions are not made in isolation. They're made in the presence of love, trust, and hope. When he reached home, he sat on his bed and took a deep breath. For the first time, he felt a sense of direction that was not confusing or overwhelming. It felt like a gentle pull, like a soft hand guiding him forward. He wasn't completely sure yet, but he was closer. Much closer. He lay down, closed his eyes, and whispered, "I think I'm beginning to understand what my heart wants." And with that gentle realization, sleep came easily, wrapping him in a calm, warm darkness. The next day, Daniel knew, would bring him to a new point in his journey, another step, another challenge, another moment to listen to himself. And slowly, he began to understand that smart decisions are not loud, dramatic choices. They grow quietly inside you, piece by piece, until finally, you feel ready to take the step that will change your life. He sat up slowly, rubbed his eyes, and stared out the window at the quiet street. The world outside seemed almost peaceful, like it wanted to give him space to understand himself. He made a cup of tea, and as he held the warm mug in his hands, he whispered softly, "Today, I will try to see my fear clearly, not run away from it." The words felt honest and heavy, but also hopeful. Perhaps the biggest step in making a smart decision was not choosing where to go, it was understanding the fear that lived inside him, the fear that tried to protect him but also held him back. After finishing his tea, he dressed, stepped outside, and began walking with slow, thoughtful steps. The sun was just rising, painting the sky with gentle shades of orange and pink. As he walked, he noticed things he had never paid attention to before: the shape of the clouds, the soft vibration of the earth under his feet, the fresh smell of early morning. Everything felt simple, yet powerful. He realized that when people are stressed or afraid, they see the world through a narrow window. But when they are calm, the window opens wider, and they can see clearly again. And Daniel felt something opening inside him today. He reached the park and sat on his usual bench, watching the early walkers pass by. A few dogs ran happily through the grass. A jogger moved steadily along the path. An older man did slow stretching exercises near the fountain. Everyone had their own reasons for being here, their own small journeys, their own choices that had brought them to this moment. And Daniel thought, maybe life is really just a long road of choices. Some small, some big. And each choice leads us here, to the place where we stand. As he sat there, he decided to face his fear honestly. Not push it away, not pretend it didn't exist, but look at it directly. He closed his eyes and asked himself, what am I truly afraid of? And slowly, the answers came. He was afraid of leaving the comfort of his small town. He was afraid of being alone in the city, far from his family, from the cafe, from the streets he knew so well. He was afraid of failing the training program, failing to adapt, failing to grow. He was afraid of being judged, of making mistakes, of not being good enough. And perhaps the deepest fear of all, he was afraid that if he said yes to this opportunity, he would no longer be the same person. Change, he realized, was both exciting and frightening because it meant letting go of who you used to be. As he reflected on these fears, he felt a tightness in his chest, but he didn't run from it. He let the fear sit with him, like an old friend who had always been there, trying to protect him but not always helping. He remembered something Sarah told him at the lighthouse: growth lives on the other side of discomfort. He hadn't fully understood it then, but now the meaning became clearer. Fear is not the enemy. Fear is the doorway. And courage is not the absence of fear, it is moving forward even when fear walks beside you. When he opened his eyes again, the world seemed brighter, as if it was rewarding him for being honest with himself. The leaves on the trees shimmered in the morning light. The air felt crisp and alive. And Daniel felt a soft, steady strength beginning to grow inside him. He stood up slowly and began walking toward the cafe, taking his time, letting the morning sun warm his skin. When he arrived, he greeted his coworkers with more energy than usual. His manager, a friendly woman named Emma, noticed and smiled. "You're glowing today," she said with a laugh. Daniel smiled shyly and replied, "Just thinking about some important things." She nodded, understanding that he didn't need to explain more. During his shift, he moved smoothly through the usual tasks, making coffee, taking orders, cleaning tables, but today he saw deeper meaning in everything he did. A woman smiled warmly when he handed her a latte, and he realized how small actions can brighten someone's day. A couple whispered quietly to each other at their table, and he wondered what decisions they were facing in their own lives. A teenager sat alone, studying with deep focus, perhaps worrying about the future. Daniel felt connected to all of them in a new way. Everyone was trying, learning, choosing, growing. Life was not easy for anyone, but everyone kept moving forward. During his break, he went outside again, but this time he called Sarah. When she answered, her voice sounded cheerful and warm. "Daniel, how are you?" she said. He took a deep breath and replied, "I'm thinking a lot. I just needed to talk." She listened patiently as he explained everything he had been feeling: the fear, the confusion, the quiet voice inside him, his parents' support, and the slow growth of courage. When he finished, Sarah said softly, "Daniel, I'm proud of you. You're doing the hard work, the inner work. Most people make decisions quickly because they don't want to feel uncomfortable. But you're giving yourself time to understand your heart. That's rare. And that's smart." Her words filled him with warmth and relief. He thanked her and she said, "Remember, you don't have to choose today. But the fact that you're looking within yourself with honesty, that is already a step toward becoming who you want to be. They talked for a little longer about life, dreams, and fear. When he hung up, Daniel felt lighter, as if someone had lifted a stone from his chest. After work, he walked to the old library at the edge of town. It was a quiet, cozy place filled with tall shelves, soft lights, and the faint smell of old books. He walked to a corner where few people went and sat at a wooden table. He took out his notebook again and wrote a new question at the top of the page. What does courage look like for me? For the next hour, he wrote slowly, honestly, letting the pen move without forcing anything. He wrote that courage did not mean ignoring fear. Courage meant hearing the fear and choosing to move forward anyway. Courage meant trusting himself enough to try. Courage meant being willing to be a beginner again. Courage meant letting himself fail and learn without giving up. Courage meant stepping out of the safe circle he had lived in for so long. As he wrote, he felt something changing inside him, not dramatically, not loudly, but gently, like the slow movement of sunlight across a room. When he closed the notebook, he felt a small but real shift inside him, a feeling that he was beginning to understand who he was and who he wanted to become. He left the library as the sun was setting, painting the sky with long streaks of orange and gold. The town looked beautiful in that light, warm and familiar, like a comforting embrace. And Daniel realized something bittersweet. Sometimes the place you love gently pushes you toward the person you are meant to be. As he walked home, he thought about all the people who had ever made big decisions, all the people who had ever stepped into the unknown. They were not stronger than him. They were simply brave for a moment. And he could be brave too. When he got home, he made a simple dinner, then sat at his table and stared at the quiet room around him. He thought about the training program again, imagining the classrooms, the new faces, the challenges, the opportunities. He imagined himself growing, learning, becoming more confident, more open, more alive. And then he thought about staying in the town, continuing his quiet, comfortable life. He loved his town. He loved the cafe. But he knew deep down that he had been waiting for something new for a long time. He had just been too afraid to admit it. As he prepared for bed, he whispered to himself, "I'm getting closer. I can feel it." And when he closed his eyes, he saw something beautiful, a road stretching forward into the distance, bright and open. It was not a perfect road, not an easy road, but it was a road that invited him to walk. A road that asked him to trust himself. A road between fear and courage. And slowly, gently, he knew that he was beginning to choose which side he wanted to stand on. He stretched slowly, feeling a mixture of nervousness and strength inside him, two emotions living side by side like two quiet travelers on the same road. He walked to the window and watched a few early birds move across the sky, free and light, and he whispered to himself, "Maybe today I will understand what choice I need to make." He made his morning tea, the familiar smell filling his small kitchen, and sat quietly at the wooden table. The tea was warm in his hands, grounding him, holding him still. A soft thought floated into his mind. Maybe good decisions are made not when you feel perfect, but when you feel honest. And Daniel felt more honest with himself today than he had in many years. After finishing his tea, he stepped outside and began walking slowly through the quiet streets of the town. Everything around him felt peaceful, gentle, almost as if the world was giving him a calm space to think. The sky above him was a soft blue, the kind that makes you breathe deeply without even noticing. As he walked past houses, shops, and gardens, he thought about all the small decisions he made every day: what time to wake up, what route to walk, what food to eat, what words to say, what tasks to do. Those small decisions were easy, comfortable, almost automatic. But big decisions, like the one in front of him now, were different. They required more than thinking. They required truth, courage, patience, and the willingness to imagine a future you had never lived before. Daniel realized that this was exactly why people often avoided big decisions, because they force you to face yourself, your fears, your dreams, your limits, and your possibilities. He arrived at the cafe and began his shift as usual. But today, he felt a strange energy in his body, a gentle excitement mixed with a quiet fear. He greeted customers warmly, made drinks carefully, and moved through the cafe with calm focus. But inside his mind, a deeper conversation was happening. He thought about the opportunity again, the program, the city, the new people, the challenges. He asked himself questions. Will I be able to handle it? Will I be good enough? Will I enjoy it? But alongside those questions came quieter, softer ones. What if I surprise myself? What if I grow more than I expect? What if this is the beginning of the life I'm meant to live? These softer questions felt comforting, like small lights in a dark hallway. During his break, Daniel stepped outside and leaned against the wall of the cafe. The sky was bright and the wind moved gently through the air. He closed his eyes and let the breeze touch his face. In that moment, he imagined himself standing in the city, beginning the program, walking into a classroom filled with strangers who might one day become friends. He imagined the first day, the nervousness, the excitement, the confusion. He imagined learning something new, feeling challenged, feeling proud. He imagined sitting in a cafe far from home, writing notes about what he had learned, thinking, I'm really doing this. For a moment, he felt a spark of excitement so strong that he opened his eyes suddenly, almost surprised by the feeling. But just as quickly as the excitement came, fear appeared again, quiet but heavy. He thought about leaving his town, leaving the comfort of the cafe, leaving his parents, leaving the familiar rhythm of his days. He imagined himself standing alone in a busy street, feeling lost, unsure where to go. And the fear whispered, what if you fail? Daniel took a slow breath, then another. He had learned something in the past few days. Fear always asks the same question. But courage asks a different one, what if you succeed? He repeated that question in his mind, letting it warm him from the inside. And for the first time, he felt the weight between fear and courage shifting, slowly leaning toward courage. When his break ended, he went back inside, feeling more balanced. The day continued and time moved quietly. Customers came and went, conversations filled the cafe, and the smell of fresh coffee drifted through the air. But something inside Daniel felt different. A door was beginning to open inside him, a door that had been closed for many years. A door that led to a part of himself he had forgotten, the part that wanted to try, explore, grow, and live a larger story. After work, Daniel walked toward the river at the edge of town, a place he had always gone when he needed to think deeply. The river flowed gently, whispering its soft, endless song. He sat on a large rock near the water and watched the sunlight dance across the moving surface. He thought about something his father had said the night before. If you wait for the perfect moment, you may wait forever. The words repeated in his mind, over and over, like a quiet drum. There would never be a perfect moment. There would never be a sign telling him exactly what to do. He needed to choose. And suddenly he understood that not choosing was also a choice to stay the same, a choice to stay small, a choice to remain in the familiar circle he had lived in for so long. He picked up a small stone and threw it into the river. The ripples spread outward in wide circles. He watched them expand, touching more and more of the water. And he realized something. Choices are like ripples. A single choice can change everything around you, slowly but surely. And maybe this opportunity, this big unknown path in front of him, was the stone he needed to throw into the quiet water of his life. As the sun began to set, painting the sky with soft orange and pink colors, Daniel walked home with a new sense of calm. He felt closer to his decision, closer than ever before. When he entered his home, he saw his notebook lying open on the table, the page where he had written about courage. He sat down and opened a new page. He wrote only one sentence. "Am I ready to become the person I want to be?" He stared at the words for a long time. He felt fear. He felt excitement. He felt curiosity. But most of all, he felt something new, a quiet, steady strength growing inside him like a small light slowly becoming brighter. He closed the notebook, stood up, and walked to the window. The evening breeze moved gently through the open glass. The street outside was calm, peaceful, familiar. He took a deep breath and whispered, "I think I'm ready to say yes, or almost ready." And he smiled softly because he knew that readiness was not a perfect feeling. It was a feeling of being willing to step forward even if the path was not clear. It was a feeling of trusting yourself enough to try. As he prepared for bed, he felt tired but content. He lay down, closed his eyes, and allowed his mind to drift. He saw the lighthouse again, the waves, the sky, Sarah's smile, his parents' support, the quiet voice inside him. All of these moments formed a picture that showed him walking toward his future. When he finally fell asleep, he felt like he was standing at the threshold of a door that was ready to open completely. And all he had to do now was gather the last piece of courage needed to step through it. Today felt different, not because the world had changed, but because he had changed. In the quiet of his room, where so many of his thoughts had lived these past days, Daniel sat up and whispered to himself, "It's time." The words were simple, but they felt powerful, deep, full of quiet truth. He didn't feel perfect. He didn't feel fearless. But he felt ready in a new, honest way. He made his morning tea, the warm steam rising softly into the room, and as he held the cup with both hands, he felt the calm inside him growing, like a slow sunrise spreading light into every corner of his mind. He remembered all the moments that had brought him here, the lighthouse, the conversations, the fears, the reflections, the river, the notebook, the quiet voice inside him. He understood now that decisions are not made in one moment. They are made across many moments, slowly, gently, like a seed growing roots before it ever grows a leaf. And today he felt those roots inside him, strong and steady. He looked out the window at the familiar street and said, "Whatever happens next, I will face it with courage." After finishing his tea, Daniel stepped outside and began walking toward the center of town. The air was cool and soft, brushing against his skin with a gentle reminder that life moved forward whether he was ready or not. The sky was a clear, open blue, full of possibility. As he walked, he noticed people moving through their own routines, a man sweeping his porch, a woman jogging with earbuds in, a group of students laughing on their way to school. Life was happening everywhere around him, and for the first time in a long time, Daniel felt like he was ready to step into it instead of standing back and watching from a distance. He reached the park and sat on his usual bench. The fountain sang its soft music, the leaves above him danced in the small morning breeze, and he breathed deeply, feeling calm in his chest. He closed his eyes and thought one last time about the decision he was about to make. He didn't think from fear. He didn't think from doubt. He thought from truth. From hope. From the new courage that had been slowly growing inside him. And when he opened his eyes, he felt something clear and strong rise inside him, like a quiet yes, not loud, not dramatic, but real. He walked to the cafe for his shift, feeling lighter and more focused than ever. When he arrived, Emma looked at him, surprised by the calm glow on his face. "You look peaceful today," she said with a smile. Daniel returned the smile and replied, "I think I finally understand what I need to do." She didn't ask more, sensing the seriousness in his voice. During his shift, he moved carefully, slowly, almost with a sense of gratitude. He noticed the small details of the cafe, the sound of the coffee machine, the warmth of the cups, the smiles of the customers, the soft music playing in the background. It felt like he was saying goodbye to a place that had held him for so long. Not with sadness, but with appreciation. When his break finally came, Daniel stepped outside, took out his phone, and called Sarah. She answered quickly, her voice warm as always. "Daniel, how are you feeling today?" He took a deep breath and said, "I'm ready. I want to join the program. I want to try." There was a moment of silence, soft almost, emotional, and then Sarah said, "Daniel, I'm so proud of you. You're going to grow so much. This is your moment." Her words filled him with warmth and relief. He thanked her, and after they ended the call, he stood there for a moment, letting the decision settle inside him like calm water finally becoming still. After work, Daniel walked home through the gentle afternoon light. The town felt familiar, but now each street, each building, each tree seemed to smile at him, as if encouraging him to move forward. He stopped by his parents' house before going home. His mother opened the door, and when she saw his expression, she knew. "You decided, didn't you?" she whispered with hopeful eyes. Daniel nodded, and she hugged him tightly, her warmth surrounding him like a safe, loving blanket. His father joined them with a proud smile, placing a strong hand on his shoulder. "We're behind you," he said. "Always." Hearing those words made Daniel feel a deep sense of strength, almost like a protective layer around his heart. He ate dinner with them, laughing softly, sharing memories, and talking about the future. It felt good, peaceful, real. On his way home that evening, the sky was painted with long streaks of purple and gold, the last light of the day giving everything a gentle glow. Daniel walked slowly, thinking about the journey he had taken inside himself. He realized that the decision he made today was not only about going to the city or joining the program. It was about becoming someone who trusted himself, someone who believed in his ability to grow, someone who was willing to take steps even when the path was not clear. He felt proud, not of the decision itself, but of the person he had become while making it. When he reached his home, he sat at his wooden table, opened his notebook, and wrote a new sentence at the top of a clean page: "I choose to grow." The words looked soft and strong at the same time. He traced them with his finger, letting their meaning sink deeper into his mind. He closed the notebook, walked to the window, and looked at the quiet street outside. Then, with a steady breath, he whispered, "Thank you," not to anyone in particular, but to the journey, to the fear, to the courage, to the moments that had shaped him along the way. As the night settled around him, Daniel prepared for bed, feeling something he hadn't felt in a long time: lightness. Not because everything was easy now, but because he finally felt aligned with himself. He lay down, closed his eyes, and saw a new picture in his mind: not the lighthouse, not the bench in the park, not the river, but a road stretching forward, bright, open, full of possibility. And this time, he wasn't standing at the beginning of the road wondering what to do. He was stepping onto it with calm confidence. He was already walking. Before falling asleep, he whispered one final thought into the darkness: "The smartest decision is the one that helps you become who you're meant to be." And with that soft truth settling inside him like a warm blanket, Daniel drifted into a peaceful sleep, ready, truly ready for the next chapter of his life.